Hey, everybody. Randy Patterson here with Boomerockty. On this interview, I'm going a little bit different than I normally do. As you well know, I interview artists, musicians, actors, actresses, authors. Uh, in this particular case, I'm going a little bit different route to hit something that goes to a landmark that goes way back in our lives. If you're a baby boomer, back to the late 60s, early 70s. You may remember the names of places like Elaine's. We hear it in Billy Joel's song Big Shot. There was Studio 54 back in the disco era. And also back in the late 60s and the early 70s was this club called Max's Kansas City. And it was the place to hang out if you wanted to see or be seen. Andy Warhol was there much later in its existence, or its second existence. The glam rock people were there, like the New York Dolls and people of that nature, David Bowie. But it was a cool place to go hang out. It was the place to go, one of the places to go to see and be seen. And it's no longer in existence, but a charity in its name called the Max's Kansas City Project is a charity that was started by a former waitress and partner of the founder of Max's Kansas City. His name was Mickey Ruskin, and her name is Yvonne Sewall Ruskin, or Yvonne Sewall now. Mickey has passed. And she has started this charity, Max's Kansas City Project, to help artists or people in the arts who may be hitting a rough spot due to, well, they did a lot of work and help during the pandemic. Artists are only as good as their last gig, and they're on to the next one. And if they're hitting health issues, things of that nature, this project comes forward with $1,000 grants to help them out. So anyway, Yvonne tells a fascinating story of how she got involved with Max's way back in the day as a waitress, her relationship with the founder, Mickey Ruskin, and how she got to this point today of creating this foundation for the last several years and what the future holds for it. If you don't mind, at the end of this interview, listen to where and how you can donate to help them out, especially if you like helping those in the arts who, as you know, don't always have next month's rent or know where their next meal's coming from. This is a great way to help. And also, if you don't mind, at the end of this interview, please hit like and subscribe. It won't cost anything, but it helps us out. And so anyway, if without any further ado, this is my first of what I hope to be more interviews in the future with Yvonne Sewall of Max's Kansas City Project. Until next time, this is Randy Patterson with Boomerockty. Stay safe and take care. Bye. There you are.
Hi.
Good morning. How are you
How are
doing?
you, Randy? Oh,
Glad
that's so
to
nice.
finally
Look
get
at
to
that
talk to you.
backdrop you made. That's so nice. You made that backdrop.
Well, you're quite welcome. It's all
I
about
wish I
who
knew
I'm
how to
talking
do.
to. So,
I don't know how to do those kind of things.
well, I will send you this if you would like. I'd be happy to give it to you, and you can use it as your background moving
Oh, that's
forward.
so kind.
So it'd be my pleasure. So, I've never been one of those hip, cool insider type of people that went to places to see and be seen. And I'm a people watcher. I like to study people and know
Me too.
what
I'm a
makes them
people
tick. But
watcher.
Max's was kind of the one of those go-to
Yeah, the
hip type
Mecca.
of
It was really
places.
the Mecca. I
Yeah,
mean, New
yeah,
York City for the, Elaine's was kind of the uptown. Um, Elaine's was kind of the uptown, more like film, television, theater, uh, place to hang, and Max's, but was all the downtown art scene. But actually, when Elaine's was closed for the day or whatever, or the night, they'd all come down to Max's. So, and it was, yeah, it was. But I started off as a waitress there. Don't forget.
that's
But
what
I
I
was
read. Yeah,
21. Yeah, so
21. Wow.
I know. I met Mickey when I was 21. Yes. He
And
was
and
13 years older.
I see. So what got you started? Tell your story so that people that aren't familiar with it can know. And, of course, we want to build up to what you're doing now, and the legacy of Max's Kansas City and your book and all that kind of stuff.
Well, what story do you want?
Well, lay them on me. Whatever you think are the most interesting and most entertaining.
Okay, well, I mean, yeah, I graduated college in 67 from University of Connecticut, and, I had this vision because, I love traveling to this day. I love going to foreign countries and learning about their culture, and I really wanted to travel. A lot of my friends, because I grew up in kind of a in Westport, Connecticut, was kind of like a wealthy suburb of New York City, but and we even though I would say it was more about appearances in our family. My father was into appearances, but I mean, we had a nice house and we lived in a really nice place and all of that. However, we weren't in the financial, league that some of
Mhm.
my friends were. And so they all got these, around back then you could travel all over Europe and go on the rail. You get a rail ticket and you could travel everywhere, get
Mhm.
off, get on. And I really wanted to do that. So my goal was, first of all, to, I waitressed in college. That was how I subsidized also, what I had to live on. And so I figured I'll go to New York City and I'll say waitress for 6 months and save money and then start traveling. But then I also kept reading, which I have in that article on Living Kingston, kept reading about, the summer of love and Haight-Ashbury, and I had never flown on an airplane. I mean, as I said, I had these great aspirations. However, I was first going to high school, from high school to college, and just wasn't in the cards anyway. So that was my gift to myself. That was my gift for me,
Mhm.
when I graduated, to get on that airplane and go sit up on Hippie Hill and commune with the universe. That
There
was
you go.
and I just with the freedom of Haight-Ashbury and the summer of love, and it was just for me, it was just incredible, because I had been tied down to studying, and not that college wasn't fun, but you had to get decent, grades. I mean, in order to
Right.
stay in. So it was really my first sense of total freedom and not having any real responsibility. And walking down 8th Street, and I mentioned that I saw, the Grateful Dead and Joplin on this
Wow.
flatbed truck going down 8th Street, and it just, you know, and as I said, going there was so the Golden Gate Park was just so spectacular, and they had the conservatory, and people were always playing music and dancing with flowers in your hair, and so that really I really enjoyed that, but then I was running out of funds, my, you know, so-called funds for what I could afford, and
Mm.
so I decided I gotta go back now and get a job, and
Mhm.
so, then I I I put a sign. I sat on Haight Street and made a sign saying "New NYC bound," and I wanted to find a guy to travel with me. I was going to hitchhike. I guess I'd never also seen. Not that we saw a lot while we were hitchhiking, um, but so I did. But as I said, and this guy said, "Oh, well, I really need to go back to New York." So we set out. I got my stuff together, which wasn't a lot because I was only going for a short period of time. Anyway, right then he turned out to be an acid casualty, which I didn't know. Yeah, yeah. and so I ended up further on down the line on my own. But I'm not going to go into that story.
Yeah.
But anyway, and then I was looking. I didn't know where to go in New York City, but I had a friend who now he was living in New York, going to Pratt Institute. They actually James Hamilton just did a documentary on him. Brilliant photographer. It's out called Uncropped. If they give him a little
Oh,
plug,
yeah.
yeah. And I went to see James, and I said, I don't know where I'm going to these places, these topless, bottomless. I don't know. They turn out to be like, know, I can't, I don't know what to do. So he said, told me about this place where that was the hottest place in downtown Manhattan where waitresses were made a lot of money and were treated like stars. And he said, you really need to go there and get an interview. So I said, well, how am I ever going to get an interview there? I mean, everybody wants to work there. Why would they choose me? And just can't call up and say I want an interview. So it turned out by destiny that James said, well, we had a high school friend who was actually 2 years ahead of me. And, and that she was a waitress there. And he said, use her name. So that's what I did, and that's how I got the interview.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah, yeah. And then I went early to check out the place, but when I got in the afternoon, you have to come between this time and this time. And I'd never seen the place before, and I was checking out the marquee, this big, big marquee that said Max's Kansas City State Lobster and Chickpeas. We didn't have chickpeas. We never ate chickpeas growing up. I didn't know what chickpeas were. So I'm
Mhm.
thinking, what the hell are chickpeas? But then I see this man on the corner, it was between 17th and 18th, this very interesting looking man walking down the street with, you know, black shiny hair hanging over one eye, kind of, and this big flowered tie. And anyway, and he had a suit jacket on, and I just kind of followed him with my eyes because he was so interesting looking. Don't forget, I had been to New York several times in high school. We used to go to this place in the village where that would take our phony IDs, Yeah, yeah. But I really didn't know a lot about certain things.
Mhm.
Yeah, anyway, so and then there was a chemical bank on the corner, and I watched him go into the chemical bank. Then the place was very, very large, larger than I had ever seen. And I went into and was talking to the cashier inside, and just seemed to go on forever. And walking around, looking at the place, and she said, "Well, you have," and I had dressed to the nines because I really needed this job. I said, my legs were one of my assets, so I said, "I make sure I show off my legs." Anyway, um, and so she said, "You have to go to the top floor." There were 3 floors. That's where the offices are, and you sit in the sort of like in the when you walk in the door, and you wait till you're called. You
Mhm.
sit in a chair and you just wait. So after that, I went upstairs and I sat and I waited. And then you go down this long hallway, and in the back, the very back, is this office. And I go into this office, and sitting at the desk is that man that I saw on the street. But I didn't know who that man was.
Mhm.
I never knew, and I didn't know much. I'd never been in the place in my life. So, but the interesting thing is over during the conversation, there was like this kind of, I don't know what one would say, this cosmic energy, this instant connection
Mhm.
between us. And it was just kinda, I always say Mickey and I looked alike, so maybe it was, we were both narcissistic. I have no
Well, hey,
idea.
Mick Jagger and Bianca, right? So
Like,
there you go.
exactly, exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I knew nothing about it, but anyway, I did get the job, and 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 my sister and I were sharing a place on, West 20th Street. And so I ran home, and I told my sister, I said, that I got a job at this most amazing place, and I start like tomorrow, you have to trail for 2 nights. And I said, and I just met the man who's going to be the father of my children. And I didn't, yeah, it wasn't about marriage for me because I was so young. And I had this vision too of, like, the flower, the flower child. the flower in her hair and the baby on her hip.
Mhm.
You know, it's just like this vision, and it was just a fantasy in a way, um, but then I started waitressing there and learned that he, owned the place and that he was married and had 2 children, and so I'm thinking, "Oh my god, what about my fantasy?" But over time, it was destiny.
Mhm.
And just a certain one if one believes in destiny, but I happen to believe in destiny because there's no other answer for it, you know? I think in certain ways in our lives, we're destined to do certain things.
I agree. I
Yeah,
agree.
so anyway, and I did waitress there, and but when I ended up quitting, um for various reasons. I was at the time I was seeing one of the night managers, and he was very jealous, and
Mm.
he often accused me of flirting, and I said, "Of course I'm flirting. How do you think I make tips?" I mean, so he just one night he was really, you know, anyway, but he said, "Quit or I'll have you fired," and I said, "I quit." And that was that. And
Mm.
so, but then I would go back and visit with Mickey because Mickey said, "I'm really sorry because you're a really good waitress." And he would kind of flirt with me off and on while I was waitressing. We'd have little conversations.
Mhm.
And so I would go in and visit him periodically. I started teaching. I was a teacher as well.
Mhm.
So, that's where I got a degree in English, but anyway, and, I was out teaching at a private school, and so then one time, I came in the afternoon because that's when I knew he had a little window of time where otherwise he was really busy.
Mhm.
And so he said he was going to pick up his daughter at some party. And I said, "Oh, could I come?" And I had also at some point heard that and I think this should be really off the books, but that his marriage was kind of
Right.
going
South.
south.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So he said, "Oh, yes," and that's when he said, "Can I see you again?" And then we never stopped seeing each other. We never, we moved in together after, anyway. And we have 2 children, and but then we ended up separating. I think, I always say it wasn't from lack of love. I think it was 2 people who were very, I was born wanting to have my own person. I wanted to be my own person.
Mhm.
I, I don't like, I like to say interdependent,
Yeah.
but, I wanted to have my own name, I always said I had my own bag of tricks,
Mhm.
but that wasn't really the case because Mickey came from a different era, and from a Jewish family and he had been an attorney who wanted to be wanted to be a part of the village, and that's how
Mhm.
we end up. He owned 10 different places in New York.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very
Max's was his 4th place, but
Oh, I didn't.
that was his crowning achievement. He started off in a little coffee house.
Ah,
Yeah,
interesting.
in the East Village. Yeah,
I'm telling
yeah.
Well,
Anyway, so that brings us up to, but, he always saw his children, and, I, you know, I never, ever anticipated Mickey's passing. Not ever. I mean, it was not even on my radar or close to being on my radar. And, he was a man who didn't drink, smoke, or take drugs. And he would say to the cab driver, "Randy's had a little too much to drink tonight. Here's $20. Make sure he gets home safe and make sure he's in his apartment." You know, and But after owning 10 places, and one of his partners was an Agent Orange victim, and I think us too. I mean, look, when things started going, not so great with us, coke was kind of the thing in those days. We started doing coke to kind of camouflage because we couldn't really express. Neither of us grew up in a family where there was a lot of communication.
Yeah.
So we couldn't really express what we were feeling, and so we would
And
kind
coke
of,
back then was supposedly harmless, right? Back then.
yeah, but yeah, but and so but then, we ended up separating and not then, we kept seeing each other. I moved out to California with the kids for a while and he was still flying out there and on and on. But, eventually he met somebody else
Mhm.
and they became a couple and they got married. And I wanted the kids to spend more time with their dad. So then I came back from California.
Mhm.
And so that he could see more of them, not just summers and yeah, because we were
Right.
flying them back and forth on it. They were little.
Yeah.
Anyway,
That was a lot for
so
a
yeah,
kid to
yeah,
do.
yeah, yeah. So, um, and then, sadly, very sadly, at the age of 50, he had gone away. He was planning on getting out of the business. And I think he really wanted to get more into the art world because that was his passion. He
Mhm.
loved artists. He really felt that those were the people he could really communicate with. That's where his comfort level was.
Mhm.
And, a but he had been, doing make his one of his partners was an Agent Orange victim from the Vietnam War and suffered from a heroin addiction.
Mm.
And Mickey kinda got into that
Mm.
between the coke and heroin and then quaaludes to fall asleep, and I wasn't with him, but we did have kids in common, so I was very aware, and I'm not casting stones because
No.
I snorted coke at parties, I was in
Mhm.
the music business. That's what we did,
It was part of
Um,
the shtick, right? So
yeah, but anyway, but he went away for his 50th birthday with his wife, Kathy, and so now his system was all clean. And he came back, and I don't know, so the story goes that one of his old dealers came in with some fresh pressed bootleg Quaaludes,
mm.
and he wasn't thinking, and one night he went out with a friend, had a couple shots of tequila, and, now he was, because when you snort coke, you drink.
Mhm.
It's really like this cycle, a little come up here, come down here,
Right,
Any
right.
anyway, and, he just forgot, and he took a couple of those Quaaludes, I guess, and and his system was all clean, and he I guess had a heart attack in his sleep and never woke up again.
Oh, that's sad.
So he was only 50. So really, that was devastating, and that's how to get to the point how this whole cycle started because it wasn't my intention to make handle Max's legacy or any of that.
Mhm.
I just was happy to have a simple life, and um, it got really complicated because also, um, well, because his partners were both doing a lot of drugs, there was um, there was a life insurance policy for the children. There were four children altogether that was in the corporation's name.
Mhm.
And the check came to the corporation,
Oh, no.
and they got someone to cash it illegally,
Mm.
and and so it was 25,000 for each. So anyway, so be and we to hire lawyers to get $100,000 back. What were the kids gonna end up with in the end?
Right.
And then art that a lot of it was Mickey's. That because he was the first one ever to trade art for tabs with artists that became wildly famous, started disappearing off the walls.
Mm.
Well, I really felt, my job as a mother is to protect my children, to make them, to be there for them,
Mhm.
make them feel safe. So and nobody else was looking to step up to the plate. Kathy, she was in a lot of we were all in a lot of pain, but his widow just wanted to leave. She didn't want anything to do with anybody. She wanted to just go,
Right.
kind of change sceneries and all of that. And certainly I understand that. Um, but they didn't have any children. We had 2 children, and
Mhm.
then he had 2 older children, and so, I stepped up to the plate, and that's really how I started, I built a website, selling T-shirts, and then, and just to and then filing for the trademark, and
Mhm.
then someone got in touch with me and said, "Why don't we do a documentary?" And we started on that together, but, it was timing was off, like you and I talked about timing. It was just, too early in the game, too much to this. People weren't willing to give certain things that we needed, so, um, somehow I turned into a book. I don't know. Yeah, and Lord knows how I don't know what, I just and so that's how High on Rebellion came about.
Which is right there, right?
Yes.
That one. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, I did probably 140 something interviews over time, but it took me I was working a full-time job with 2 little kids.
Oh,
I
yeah.
was in the music business.
Right.
So it took me off. I didn't do it regularly, off and on, I didn't do some interviews, and took almost 10 years for
Mhm.
that book.
Well,
And
rewinding back to when you were actually working in Max's in the beginning, what kind of do you have a favorite celebrity story of anybody you dealt with while you were there, either as you were, you know, serving their table or somebody you met after hours or anything like that? Did you have much interaction with those types?
well, I wasn't there for a real long time as a waitress. I was maybe only 3 months.
Ah, okay.
But, um, well, I mean, and when you were new, you had to work the back room. That was like the punishment room for waitresses because it was the Warhol room for the most part, and the theater people. And none of them had any money, and they were all on drugs.
Ah,
And they would, and so Warhol, because they weren't getting paid, he would let them sign their name to the check. And no offense to Andy, but Andy was not the most generous man in the world, when it came to tips. So these that's why they called it the punishment room. They put you back there to see if you could withstand the heat, if you were gonna last as a waitress.
yeah.
And, so I was back there, and there was this really, really cute young he was so cute, and he had this curly hair, and we were really flirting. I mean, I really was taken with him, and, um, I had no idea who he was, just taken with him. And then, when I you didn't get off till 4 in the morning.
Wow.
Also, I was working the 7 p when you're new, you work 7 PM to 4 AM.
Wow.
And yeah, and so, um, when I came out, you have to check out your checks, and when I came out, there he was waiting for me.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah, and, and we had this little kind of dance, you know, you know? Well, so then he came home with me, but that was Tim Buckley.
Ah,
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. Yeah, yeah. And he was actually thrilled that he was on the way up at that point.
Mhm,
It
mhm,
just really, I think maybe he was coming out with his first album.
mhm.
And, that was 1967, you
Wow.
know? Yeah, and, he liked that I didn't know who he was. I think 'cause that, he felt like, she just likes me.
Yeah, yeah, for who he
Yeah, yeah,
was.
and it
Yeah.
wasn't it wasn't because he lived in California, and he actually had a girlfriend, Janie. I didn't know any of this. I didn't even know who he was. So, just like with Mickey, I didn't know, forget I had just come out of Kate Ashbury.
Right, right.
Anyway, yeah, yeah, and of course, when Mick Jagger came in, I didn't wait on Mick Jagger with Bianca in the back room. Of course, they had a code of ethics at Max's. You did not bother people who were famous. You left them alone, but all of a sudden, everybody, including me, was kind of streaming into the back room, sitting on people's laps because it was the first time they had come there,
Yeah.
you know? And so, and they were so really exquisitely beautiful. I
Hmm.
mean, both of them. They were just, yeah, like you say, they kind of looked alike, but
Yeah.
they really young. Everybody was young back then. We were all young.
I
Yeah,
vaguely remember those times. So,
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I mean, yeah, a lot of celebrities came in, but I did not necessarily wait on them.
I see. I see.
But everybody who was anybody in that day that was in New York doing a movie or had an art opening, whatever it was, a filmmaker making a film, that was the place you go to. And
Hmm.
what they would do is, because it was everything for everybody. We could cash checks, huge checks for people, because there wasn't any ATM machines or
Right.
banks
Right.
open at night, even phone machines. I mean, those things really didn't exist. And so on the side of the cashier was kind of like the message board, and people they'd say, go to Max's. I'm going to leave you a message, and I'll tell you when to meet me. So
Oh.
people would literally get off an airplane, and before they even went to the hotel, they'd go to Max's, pull pull the message off the message board, say, "Okay, I have to come back here at 10:30 tonight and meet so and so," and
Okay.
that's what they would do, and it was a revolving door of truly some of the most innovative, interesting people, and as I was telling someone, as Steven Tyler said, "You knew even the assholes were gonna make it one day."
That's
It was that kind of place.
Yep.
He said it was
Yep.
like throwing a pack of those blackjack or whatever it is, those firecrackers in the room, and they all explode at once. And that was like what it was like, and it was really chaotic as a waitress, because it was really busy.
Mhm.
And and you had to carry all the plates up your arm. They didn't, and I got Mickey eventually to create like a salad room. They didn't have, you made everything. You made the salad, you made the desserts. I mean, you got everything together. So it was really very, very chaotic. And so you really didn't have much time for socializing
I see.
unless you met somebody after the fact. However, many people, including myself, met their partners there. They also made incredible collaborations. Some of people from that back room got it. They were, actors, became actors in Hair,
Ah,
which was on Broadway back then. I
right.
mean, the connections that were made there. When I say in the treatment for the documentary, hopefully one day we'll see it. It was really about the power of human connection and a love story
Networking.
about
Yeah.
all these people who congregated. We're all still, all of us who are alive, and those when before they had passed, we're all still connected.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I mean, and that's unheard of. It's just unheard of. That, we're going back to the late 60s.
Mhm.
And then it became also, then, the second incarnation was, now Mickey didn't own it anymore. He closed it in 74. He had sold it. The guy turned out to be a shyster. It was sort of like holding the mortgage. So the person gives you X amount up front, and then you pay monthly payments. But he ran the place into the ground, was running it into the ground, didn't know what he was doing, had no charisma, and stopped making payments.
Mm.
And so then Mickey had to take it back, but he didn't want it. His life had already changed. He was gone, you know? So he did not want it. And when he came back, and he realized he didn't want, when he sat there again, it's like sometimes when, a marriage, you just kind of, it's at the end, and you time to, you grew as much as you can, and whatever, time to move on.
Mhm.
And he realized, I don't really want to be here. Now we were no longer that we weren't together at that point. Don't
Right.
forget, he was
Right.
with somebody else. And the Con Ed said, "There's this huge Con Ed bill, and unless it's paid, we're turning off the electric." And he walked out, and never walked in again. But then
Wow.
this guy, Tommy Dean, heard that there was this famous place in this spot and wanted to open a place. He had some kind of dive out in Long Island, very different type of personality, and and learned that he could get the lease by paying that electric bill. And reopened it with the same name. Mickey just never bothered to sue him because he was done.
Yeah.
He could have sued him, but
Yeah.
you know, he was an attorney. He just
Left it
didn't.
alone. Not a battle
Yeah,
worth fighting
and
in
now,
his mind. Yeah.
so I mean that era is very important, but that became kind of like the glitter rock, punk, you know, disco, all
Right.
combined into one. And that went from uh, 75 to 81. And then that closed.
Mhm. Mhm.
I mean, and then, you know, then Tommy Dean, unbeknownst to me, and don't forget now I was already trademarking the name. I filed for the trademark. I was already using it. But unbeknownst to me, he had been counterfeiting money in the basement while the bands were playing upstairs.
Whoa.
Yeah, yeah. So I didn't know, but he had been in jail for 5.5 years for counterfeiting money. I know. And so when he gets out of jail, he says, calls me up and says, I want my name back. I said, your name? What are you talking about? Where have you been for all these years? Well, I've been keeping the legacy alive. I have kept this in the public eye. You know,
Mhm.
I have resurrected it. And, but he dragged me 3 times through federal court, 3 times
Wow.
because, because he was connected to the mafia. When you go to jail and you get out, the mafia takes care of you.
Mhm.
I'm not gonna I don't know if this that part should be on record. Um, you get, however they work their workings,
There are
and
benefits.
yeah, you get benefits. So he wanted to open another Max's Kansas City, which is, and so as it turned out, again, I'm going to make, I'm trying to make it short, and you can obviously edit. Um, the judge said, "Well, I'm going to let him open the place because you're not opening the place yet." Although I was trying to get somebody, but I hadn't yet succeeded. And he said, "But I won't. I'm not going to make a decision on what's on the name. Oh, that's in the trademark trials and appeals board because he filed an opposition against my trademark."
Mhm.
Because you have 3 years, you have to show, and I had it in all categories. I just finally said, and I sent an attorney to, I said, well, I'll take territories because I'm a kind person. I'm a very, I'm a Libra. I kind of like, I always like to keep the scales
You and I
even.
both. So
Yeah, yeah. So I just said, you know what? I mean, I had sent my attorney and he said, she'll do territories. He said, no, he wanted it all. I said, I'm not, you have it. It's yours. I don't give a shit. I'm moving to Europe. My kids were now grown. I had the loft, I could sell it and become a millionaire. And on my own, I got that loft on my own, nobody else. And so we had lived there 21 years. And, and so I sold it and I moved to Europe and I was happy as a pig in shit, I must say. I lived in 3 countries. I traveled. I was having the best of times. Truly, you're not a care in the world. It was just glorious, all of it. I traveled. My dream, actually, Mickey had taken me to Europe my first time ever. It was incredible. But, and unbeknownst to me, destiny comes into play again. And, I had a crooked financial advisor, not knowing because he came to me through a friend and I worked with him for a year and we all did really well. And, his father was a very powerful attorney, blah, 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 blah. And I was forced back to the United States to file a lawsuit.
mm.
Anyway, when I got back and, had to find a place, you know, uh, I lost a fortune. I lost a good part of my fortune, but all of a sudden I get a letter from my attorney saying, you won, the name is yours.
Mm.
So The way I looked at it, although it was a very painful 2 years going through the betrayal and having to deal with this lawsuit and, but the way I looked at it was that I was giving these lessons in compassion and humility, knowing that your life could change in a second flat. I
Mhm.
went to be from being a millionaire that wasn't quite gonna be homeless, but
Close.
yeah, I felt like I was, in a state of constant panic, about everything, and I got sick and, and, so I thought, I've been given these lessons so that I understand what other people go through.
Mhm.
And I've been given this name for a reason because I walked away from it. I am supposed to help other people in life with the cachet of the name.
Mhm.
And that's how I started Max's Kansas City project, and kept the legacy going and used the cachet of the name to get donors, and we had to put together a team and a board and all of that, and eventually became a 501(c)(3) nonprofit, and been doing that now for over 22 years, if not longer. Our
So tell
first
tell found what or and potential donors what you do specifically through that foundation.
Okay, well, we started our main program is we've got 2 programs, our youth program and our adult program.
Mhm.
Our main program started that we still do. We provide emergency relief to, individuals in the arts who are going you have to be making your living at your art discipline. You can be a teacher on the side, you could be a bartender on the side, but as long as you can demonstrate that you're passionate about your art discipline, whatever that art discipline is. You could be
Mhm.
a dancer, a writer, a musician, a visual artist, a filmmaker, any form of the arts. And you have to live in New York State or have to have been associated with Max's.
Mhm.
And and then, of course, we have an application, but it's not that complicated, this application. We've made it easier over time to apply. So if you're going through a rough patch, like COVID, we just got inundated. Oh my
Oh, I
God.
bet.
It's like, and then the writers' strike.
Yeah.
Now, that's another one because all these entertainers weren't getting work, all these actors, you know, people in television, they who work all the time weren't getting work. So many things happen. You have to take care of a parent.
Mhm.
You had a bike accident. I mean, and now you can't dance for. I mean, yeah, a myriad of things you would never anticipate happen. So we give $1,000 grants, one-time grants that goes to the need. So it's using for some form of housing, medical or legal aid or dental, utilities, food,
Mm.
um, pay your rent, pay your mortgage. And then usually it's me, but I'll mentor you on because I've been doing this for so long, where to go to get more funding,
Ah.
where to apply that would fit your need,
Mhm.
you know?
Mhm.
Whether it's the Actors Fund or, Jackson Pollock, or there's so many different organizations.
Right.
Um, and we have we give a lot of grants. We're mainly we have we give grants to honor people for Black History Month, to just to honor you for your contribution to the arts. Mainly someone in the Hudson Valley up here
Mhm.
where we're based out of now. We used to be based out in New York City, but
Right.
um, and um, and we just honor you. We have a little ceremony, and we give you $1,000 for your guilty pleasures, whatever, to, but whatever you want, that's yours.
Mhm.
Just
Mhm.
to honor yourself. And then we try to give one for LGBTQ month if we can find somebody. And then we give 2 grants for youth in the summer to attend a summer program in the arts whose family is underfunded. And
Right.
my real passion is we started this years ago, but sadly, the person, my partner who was on our board, had passed from cancer. So it was called Fearless Youth. Express yourself without fear in positive ways. And introducing, now I switched it a little bit. During COVID, I saw that the kids were really struggling with the isolation.
Mhm.
And I thought, I'm supposed to, again, I'm supposed to get this off the ground now. So it's introducing teens to the arts as a creative outlet to reduce the risk of substance abuse and suicide. And
Mhm.
we have two high school podcasters, video podcasters. So we have eight now, eight up on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, and Hudson, which is a local channel. And we but then now we have a new podcaster coming in because Katie, who was one of our co-hosts, has got into college and it's toward the end of the year,
Yeah.
and she really has to focus on her future.
Right,
So
right.
we just brought on another
Mm.
person, and we try to do at least one a month, and 2 half-hour interviews that we do with either someone who's inspirational or somebody who has experienced, say, a parent that has gone through substance abuse issues, or maybe a child who had taken their life,
Mm.
and their story, and how the arts, for example, my story, how the arts really, with losing Mickey, and how the arts really, um, focusing on my art, running a recording studio
Mhm.
and working on the book really helped me to be able to focus that energy in a positive way.
Mhm.
And so that's really, I love working with our youth. They're our future,
Yeah.
and love giving them hope for the future. And, um, you know, it, they get pleasure out of it, and we get pleasure out of it. So we do, as I say, 2 half-hour interviews a month that are then cut down by an editor to 10 to 15 minutes at the most.
Yeah.
And that's what we do.
Well, how can if someone wants I mean, my podcast goes all over the world, of course, just like
Yeah,
you
that's
guys's
great.
do, and we have all sorts of types, all sorts of economic statuses and that type of thing. If somebody wanted to make a donation to your work on there, how would they go about doing that?
They would just go to maxiskansascity.org,
.org, okay.
click on donate, and donate. Or they
Well,
can send a check. They can send us a check. They can wire it into our account.
mhm,
If the address is on there,
mhm,
and we keep trying to update it. I'm also working on a documentary. There's quite a bit of it has kind of been, well, a lot of the interviews, and we did sort of like what we call an assemblage,
mhm.
but it really needs it to be recut in a new way for a younger audience.
Right, right.
Yeah,
Now
to
is
make it more relevant to the current times.
exactly.
Yeah.
What about the book? I think your book is still available, is it not?
Well, it's an ebook now,
Mhm.
but the vision was, I mean, you can get a used copy on eBay or Thrive
Yeah.
Books or one of those.
Yeah,
But
they're
it
pulling
is
some big
called,
bucks on those used ones there now.
on eBay, you can pretty much find good deals.
Okay.
Um, and it is an ebook, on Amazon.
Mhm.
It's with Open Road Digital Media. And, the vision is to, once we get this documentary really moving again, I put it on the back burner for a long time. I've been busy, and then I'll pick it up again and someone might call. Then we'll republish it. If I have an agent, it'll be republished.
Oh, good deal. Good deal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, we'll definitely, let's maybe have another chat when that book and documentary
Yes.
tees up, and we'll plug it through here, and, hopefully it'll won't be too much longer before all that can happen for you, and then I can do my part to try to help you guys out on that.
Well, that is so kind of you, Randy. Thank you so much for having me. I really, really appreciate really the acknowledgement and why not? I mean, the publicity for the nonprofit. I mean, the visibility is always helpful to
Well,
keep us
every little bit
going.
helps. Every little bit helps. I'm not Rolling Stone magazine, thank God, but you know, I've got my following, or the site does. I don't say it's me, it's the people that I get the
Well, but
interview
it
that
is
attracts
you.
everybody. So,
It is you. I just want to say one last thing. I'm
sure.
actually presently looking for a larger organization that might have an interest in making us an arm so I could transition to ambassador. I just want to give talks to teens. I want to create a TED talk, like a multimedia presentation
Right,
to
right.
inspire them and motivate them to become fearless.
Well, you know what? Somebody may be watching this when it
Yes.
posts, and maybe that'll happen. Let's believe that
Yes.
it will. So,
Thank you so, so much. I
well,
really appreciate it, Randy.
well, thank you for taking the time. I'll let you know when this posts, and we'll be chatting some more. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Great.
Take
Have an
care and be
incredible
safe.
weekend.
You too. We'll talk soon.
Bye.
Take care. Bye bye.